Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome in, everyone. Happy Monday. It is Daily Wolves. I am your host, Chris, and with me today is Mr. Will. Hey, Will.
Hello. How are we?
Living the dream. Living the dream, as always. I never specify what kind of dream it is, just because that keeps it open to, for everyone to give their own thoughts on that.
But either way, it's a dream.
Mm-hmm. It is. And we've got so much to discuss, Will. It's good to speak to you because it's been a few days since we chatted. We've all been super busy here at Daily Wolves.
Yeah.
And so the last episode we put out was just prior. It was like our preview to the Newcastle game. And so much has happened.
Well, sorry, I'll interrupt you there.
Mm-hmm.
That episode was a bit of absolutely everything
It was
for the Wildcard Wednesday, but we're here.
Yeah, we are. But yeah, so just to put into context the timeline, and so we've got loads. There's been quite a lot happening, obviously going into that game, and then some more news after it. So lots to chat about today. So I'm looking forward to breaking it down like a hip hop dance or something. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm too old. See, I just sound old. So let's start at the beginning. Will, let's think back in time to last Wednesday, Newcastle. I presume, like me, you watched it. We haven't actually chatted. We're going in raw, guys, because Will and I actually haven't had a chance to correspond.
Sorry, it was just one of the classic GSPN Daily Wolves innuendos.
Yeah,
there.
You're welcome.
No, I'll hold it together. Okay, I've not helped things, have I?
No.
But yeah, I assume, Chris, you were about to just ask, for general thoughts and feelings after the Newcastle performance.
Yeah, overall feelings. Like, did you watch the game live? By the way, we didn't actually cover.
Yeah. Unfortunately for myself, I just think it simply wasn't our day. No matter where you looked, I think, it just showed the difference between the two sides that's reflected in the table. Really, I think we were comfortably beaten. I think, having said that, I think, it's not like we didn't have our chances, but at no point, especially as soon as we went a goal down, to be honest, I was filled with that same sort of feeling that we've become so used to this season of, I just didn't expect us to salvage anything, and it's not ideal.
Yeah, it was a frustrating game because I tell you what, I think the upsetting thing for me was until their first goal. I mean, first 5 minutes, obviously we looked like we came out the guns blazing over the first few minutes, just first 5 minutes, just to try and get them on the back foot, see if we could get an early goal or something. And we looked okay. We looked fairly offensive. Then obviously they got fully a grip on the game and were advancing. It did feel like it was a matter of time. But what I will say, the thing that was frustrating me the most about the first goal was that it looked like Saar was going to be having a great day. Like, he looked commanding of his box. He made a couple of great saves, and it was feeling like one of those days where it was going to take something special or fluky to beat him. Because he looked on form. It felt like Saar was Saar of old. And because he has been having this return to form under Vitor Pereira. And then typically when he's having a great game, that first goal, the deflection is so harsh on Saar. You can see he's going completely the opposite direction. He's got no chance, and it just puts it, regardless of what you think of the build-up to the first goal, I just felt so sorry for Saar in that situation and for the team as a whole, because it felt like Saar was having a great game, and then obviously it just kind of, I feel like he couldn't have done anything about all three of them, to be honest, given the marking of the second two. And that was frustrating me because it felt like he was having a great day.
Yeah, no, I would agree. He started really well, which isn't necessarily a good thing in terms of the fact that he was having to be called into action so much. But, when he was called into action, he certainly, like you said, he looked like the Saar of old. And, that was something that was giving me confidence. It's something that I'd just forgotten about, really, until you've just mentioned it. And something that annoyed me, actually, this is not exactly relevant to the performance, but was to the commentary that I was listening to. I think I had it on Sky. I can't remember who the commentator was, saying that Isak had curled it into the far corner.
Yeah.
And it was such a clear deflection. And I can't remember who it was. They did eventually realise, anyway, that it was a massive deflection. But I just remember sitting there in front of the TV getting really wound up each time they said it was a good finish, as if it wasn't like the most obvious, fluke, as you said. But yeah, as I mentioned before, I think as of that point, I'd sort of unfortunately succumbed to defeat. Really, I just thought, right, especially with the type of goal it was, I just thought it's going to be one of those days, or evenings in this case.
Yeah, that first goal was a sucker punch, and then the second two. I mean, overall, I feel like Newcastle were far more worthy of their win than, say, Forest were in the game before, because that really did feel like three counter punches where they had 3 shots and scored 3 goals. But Newcastle at least felt like for the majority of time they were, fairly in control, and we were literally just countering when we could. But their second and third goal, it was just the terrible, terrible marking in the box. And I hate to say it, after we just did our kind of mid-season review of mentioning Ivan, we mentioned how Santi Bueno has been a much improved player. For me, and you might think differently of how people performed in the back three, but for me, he was majorly at fault for those 2 goals.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think any of the defenders covered themselves in glory for those 2. I actually thought it was a combination of both him and Doherty for the second goal, because of where Isak was positioned, was sort of in between those 2, and Doherty seemed to push up randomly for some reason. And
well, if I can highlight my thoughts on that, because obviously watching it live and then watching the replays afterwards, for me, because Santi doesn't strike me as necessarily a loud, mid defender, and so it looks like he puts his arm out, like he does that thing the defenders do when they're kind of vaguely gesturing that they want the next person in the line to take, to mark whoever it is they're palming off. But it didn't seem like there was much besides the arm wave. Maybe there was, but it didn't seem very clear. There was no look to check that the person has got them. He just waves his arm and assumes.
He passed him on. Yeah, he passed him on to no one.
He passed him on to no one, and he didn't check to see if Doc is there. Whether or not Doc is there, he needs to make sure that he's not just passing it off to no one, and he doesn't, and then he just lets him free. And for me, that was part of that was the So it's communication. It's that communication thing of making sure that someone's got them.
Yeah, that's it. Either way, I think regardless of who you blame for it, as you mentioned, it probably was Santi at fault, but all round, I don't think a man, especially when you're playing a back three, someone can peel off someone and what have you, but no matter whose fault it is or whose man it is in terms of who's marking who, regardless of that, I just don't see how someone can have so much time and space in such a position on the pitch, especially given where the ball was coming from as well. We were all penned in. There's about 7 Wolves players in the box, and yet he still had acres. And I think that was reflected in his finish. He sort of, when he received the ball, Isak, I bet he couldn't believe his luck, and he was just able to calmly. He took a second, and then just easily side-footed it into the left-hand corner, as well, I say as if it was too easy for him. It was too easy for him. So yeah. And like you said, the same sort of story followed for the third, really.
Yeah, you're right. And the third one, for me, Bueno does a slightly different thing there if you watch it back, because I think it's Andre that is actually on whoever got the assist, is that like the marker on the left, in the left position at that point. And Bueno's in the middle with Gordon. And then it's like he doesn't trust that Andre's got whoever it is. And so he moves out of the middle, leaves the attacker in all that space to go and support Andre. And it's like, no, just trust that Andre has got him. And because otherwise you're leaving this guy in the middle of the box on his own, and it was just a complete repeat. And so that's why for me that stood out. Obviously everyone's got their own opinions, but that's the way I read that situation.
No, and look, as I mentioned before, the key issue for me is, regardless of who's at fault defensively for those situations, it's just not good enough.
No.
It's just not good enough. And that was the sort of thing, when I said about the first goal going in, and I just thought, here we go. I just think those errors and mistakes were bound to come, in their numbers after you get that sort of such a big slice of bad luck in the way of the first goal. I could see it coming. It just felt like it was typical of us so far this season, and that's something we need to look to change.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the new signing that played in that game, obviously Emmanuel Agbadou, or Aga, as he said in the videos that he's happy to be called. Now I think he can play the left. It's not his necessarily favoured position from what I've read about his experience, and I have to say, I think if and when Totti is fit, regardless of other signings that may or may not come in, I can foresee a future where he ends up in the middle, Totti's on the left, and Doc is on the right. That's what I see as a possible, because I feel like I think when Totti's fit, Bueno will go to the bench.
I think it's a toss up between him and Doherty to who goes to the bench, because although I mean, as you said, we've been sort of reviewing the players mid-season, and Doc had been a big surprise in his new role against Forest and Newcastle. He hasn't been at the races, so it's either or. I think, like you said, I can definitely see Totti getting his place back, which is certainly not something that I would have sort of foreshadowed.
No,
but
for me, we would have conceded a couple more goals if it wasn't for Aga, because there was a couple of moments in that where he's actually the one that's like tracked across the box to save a couple of last ditch efforts. Not even in he's gone out of position to actually make the stop and tracked well across his to mark someone out, and made a couple of great last ditch blocks. Some wayward passing, I will say, some wayward passing, and maybe that's because he's on the wrong side that he's used to, playing from the left, and maybe because he was emphasized in that one little video that they released of him chatting to Vitor about how you've got no time in the Premier League. Maybe he felt rushed and was just, I don't know, feeling like he had to get the ball away.
Certainly looked uncomfortable on the left. It was a bit like for like in terms of, I mean, Totti's left-footed and sometimes is a bit wayward on the left, and it's somewhat frustrating if that left-footed central defender that we so needed we haven't got. Having said that, like you said, he put in some meaty challenges, meaty blocks at some points, which I was a big fan of, and it the passing out the back, as you know, Chris, it's not a massive issue.
No, as long as he can,
as long as it tightens the defence, that's the main thing, isn't it?
We've said it many a time here on Daily Wolves. We do like it tight at the back. Now, I will say as well, it's nice to have a bit of a beast back there. He looks strong on the ball. He doesn't look like anyone's going to knock him off.
No.
Once he's got possession, he's not going to give it up easily. I feel like he's just that little battering ram of a guy. I say little, big battering ram of a guy that's just going to really, make sure he's not knocked off the ball. But he made some great tackles. But if he can improve his passing, I know it's not the end of the world, but at least not giving kicking it out of play all the time, because there was a couple that were just absolutely miles off.
Yeah. We'll have to see.
All right. Yeah. Before we touch on a couple of other things and move on, let's just do daily updates and remind everyone that here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we did spend a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. What I will say, Will, is that I think had it been, because it was a 3-0, it didn't end up being a thing. But if it had, say, been 3-2 in the dying moments and Santi Bueno scores that header that could have made it 3-3, that VAR decision, I think, was absolutely atrocious. Now, I know in the grand scheme of things, given the scoreline, it didn't make a thing. But if it had come down to that, everyone would be absolutely livid.
Yeah. And something else on a similar note, the offside that wasn't offside for Isak. I've got a friend who's a Newcastle fan, and as soon as the game was over, Obviously they're piping up, but they said those exact two things. It's fine margins, and again, I think it goes back to my point of as soon as that massive deflection went in, you just knew there was gonna, like I said, it was gonna be one of those days, and these decisions, these mistakes, these 50-50 calls, it just seemed that they were all destined to go against us.
Because the thing is, for me, they give the handball. There's two things. One, his arm is actually pretty much down at his side, and for the other, the defender is pulling it this way and that and holding on. He hasn't actually got control of his arm because the defender is grappled onto him the entire time. So how can you give a handball decision when it's not really out an unnatural position? And even if you deem it as so, he's not in control of his arm because the opposing player is actually putting it there. So I don't
understand.
I don't understand. It's the thing.
Look,
they make up rules here, Chris, left, right, and centre.
Chris, I'll tell you what it is. It's utter woke nonsense. It's just, I think decisions like that sum up modern football and sum up why so many people get annoyed by modern football. And it's a whole podcast on its own. That is, I think.
Yeah. And I know, and I want to get your thoughts before we move on Larson, because obviously,
I'm glad you've asked.
After the Forest game, there's a lot of people moaning about him missing some chances. But again, we made a point. At least he's in the right place. He's getting the chances. He has scored, 7 goals already in his first Premier League season. And I know there isn't really another option than him right now, and we would potentially like another signing just to have a bit of variety and give him a rest at times, for the last 20 minutes. But what are you making of the debate on Larson at the moment, and how do you think he did overall?
The missed chances are annoying, but it happens, and he's scored enough goals and had enough decent finishes to get away with one or two. Don't get me wrong, there have been crucial ones at times, the timing of which they've come about in the games, and it is annoying, as you said. We could have been, 3-2 down, and that Santi Bueno goal that was disallowed could have made it 3-3, and you do need your strikers to take chances, but I won't be harsh on him for that. What annoyed me was his complete lack of hold-up play in the past 2 Premier League games, which surely should be a strong point. And it's what I mentioned before about he can do it. We've seen him do it. He's good. It's just very inconsistent. And Dan Burn, to be honest, had an absolute field day with him, which does my head in, because I get that Burn's tall, but Larson, he's a big lad. He's a big lad, but he just doesn't put himself in and about enough. I was watching the Ipswich game the other day. Anyway, I was watching Delap, and don't get me wrong, he was nothing to write home about, and Larson's a better footballer than him. But what I liked about him was he left a bit on the centre halves each time it went up to him, and sometimes the ref would call it for a foul. But if you've got that physicality, I think you just have to use it better than he did, because, as I said, Dan Burn, who isn't a good defender, I don't think he ever has been, really, not at this level of football, but he was made to look, a lot better than he was. And, it's just, it did annoy me if you haven't already noticed.
Yeah, I can see that. I think in terms of the chances, I'm not devastated by the missed opportunities. In terms of, I still feel like he's in the positions, and prior to this couple of games, he's potentially outdone his expectations in terms of, because if you think, he hasn't actually always had that many shots on target in a game, and when the opportunities have come, he's put the ball in the net more often than not. So the fact he's now, law of averages, he's gonna have a couple of games where it goes the other way. So that's not freaking me out. I get what you mean about the hold-up play. I do feel like when Cunha's been in the side, he tends to better predict where the ball is going to end up off Larson, or be closer to him to respond and get the knockdowns quicker, or be there.
Sorry, Chris, sorry to jump in. I think my issue is that I've not even seen many of those knockdowns from Larson. Okay. I've just not seen it. But I do appreciate what you mean. If you're missing, Cunha, for example, it's going to have an effect on those around him, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, clutching at straws, maybe, but yeah, in terms of the chances, I think people are being a little bit harsh on him.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah,
100%. Especially when you consider, like you said, was it 7 goals already this season? If he gets into double digits, he could even push for 15 goals in the Premier League in his first season for a team who's seeming destined to finish just outside of the relegation zone. Fingers crossed. Then nobody can complain about that. But that's providing he gets to that point.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, obviously, we come out of that game 3-0, and, I'm disappointed like you are, but I'm aware that Newcastle are on, what was that, their 9th win in a row at that point, I think. So, they're on great form. You can't argue with it. So we've come between them and Forest, we've come up against 2 informed teams. So we've been, it's not, I'm saying it's not the end of the world, but, it's not like a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But then obviously there was no Lemina in the squad, and in the press conference afterwards, Vitor, we learn about more and more about the Lemina situation, about the fact that he's basically come to him before the game and said, before they've flown to Newcastle, saying, I'm not in a state to support the team and be part of the squad. And he's, looking for a way out, and I'm not going to be in there. And then, I mean, how you feel? I know how you're feeling because we've had little mentions of it in our group chat. But what do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, you know me. I'd always have a soft spot for him, and I always thought he was better than that. Now, after hearing and reading that, I want him to piss off out the club. I don't ever want to see him in a Wolves shirt again, and neither does he. Purely just because there are so many fans, so many little kids growing up supporting Wolves. There's thousands of fans who would do anything. They would trade anything in their lives, and I'm one of them to spend a second, on the pitch in whatever league, whatever game, wearing a Wolves top and to represent Wolves, and you're getting paid ungodly amounts of money to do just that and live out thousands and thousands and thousands of people's dreams. Now, I understand there's more to it behind the scenes. I understand there's more to it than that. But for me, that in itself, as a principle, overrides anything. And I think if you refuse to play, you refuse that opportunity because you don't want to. I don't care what the reasons are, unless it's an injury, or something like when his father passed away last year or the year before. We all supported him through that. Unless it's something like that, just because you don't want to, because you want to leave. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace, and more than anything, I feel disappointed. Just because, as I said, I thought it was better than that, but evidently not.
Yeah, I think because there's 2 levels to it as well, right? There's the professional footballer aspect of it. It's your job. There are many of us that turn up to our jobs day in, day out when we don't necessarily want to. We don't. There's not everyone who enjoys their jobs, and they're still doing a job that many people would die for, regardless of whether it's the team they supported as a kid or whatever. They're still getting paid to play football, which is pretty fantastic in itself.
Yeah.
And so not only is there a professionalism level of just being expected to do your job when you're paid a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
On top of that, there is also the fact that the club have, like you say, supported him through his bereavement. They even signed his brother on loan for a few months. Who was never going to be in the side, but just so he could be close to him during that bereavement period and support him in that way, which is the club spending money to support him through bereavement. And all this other stuff, and then been so supportive, and the fans have been loving him, player of the season, and given the captaincy, and for whatever's gone on before. To be honest, I'm quite happy with Vitor for saying it all out loud.
Yes,
and Vitor made a point of saying, I don't know what's gone on before I came, but this is what I've been told, and this is where it is, and I don't want someone in the squad who's just not ready to play. So I'd rather have someone on the bench that wants to play. I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just, like I said, for me, it's the feeling it's the disappointment of it, just because he didn't seem that type of person, let alone player. But Yeah, no, it is what it is. You know what, Chris? I'm sorry to cut that topic short, but it's just annoying me talking about it. For me now, he's on the same level as Nunes.
Yeah, I think even though apparently he has now, we should make it clear. Apparently, he's come to the team and Vitor and made some kind of apology for
Yes,
whatever it's
yes,
worth and
he can
put
stick
himself
it up his
forward
arse.
to play. It's too late. It's too late
Yeah,
for me. I think he's lost
yeah.
the fans. I'd be amazed if anyone's welcoming him back with open arms.
Oh, no way, no way. Like, look, I think at this point you've gathered my thoughts on it. It's just a disgrace.
What we'll say on that though, we can't close out on that without saying that obviously Al Shabaab apparently have come in, apparently even asking to have him on a free, presumably getting cheeky with the fact that they know it's publicly been
Mm,
declared now that he wants to go and he's only got a few months left, and so they're probably like, well, we can just take him now. Like, I don't think they should by any means have him on a free. Apparently, we want about 5 to 6 million for him. I mean, at the
yeah,
very least, they should be paying something to take him away.
yeah. I think regardless of what they pay, all it's going to be used for is lining Jeff Shee's pockets of the past few transfer windows or anything to go by. So, like I say, I'd carry him there to get him out of the club. It really doesn't bother me at this point.
Very nice, very nice. Well, if he does go, then obviously
Yeah,
the other news at the moment is that various sources over the last 24 hours or so, 48 hours, have suggested that Manu Silva from Vitoria is on the brink of a move to Wolves,
yeah,
defensive midfielder, centre back player. Reports suggesting the deal is likely to be 10 to 12 million euros with a 10 to 15% sell on clause. Now, they played, I think it was yesterday, and he wasn't in the squad because it does seem it's that imminent that he's like on the
yeah.
brink of this move. He was pulled out of the game. Um, I think we both kind of prior to this move didn't know much about this player, but have you got any thoughts on this news, this latest breaking news?
I mean, it seems like you said a straight swap for Lemina. I've tried reading up on him, and it said that he can play centre back as well as centre midfield, which is
Mm.
something that Vitor expressed a desire for. But all I can go off is the fact that, well, I don't know anything about him, and so I'm open to be pleasantly surprised. Growing up, I didn't know anything about Bakary Sacco when he joined.
Hmm.
you know, I loved him, so you can't really read too deeply into it either way. I don't think. I just fingers crossed he's good, and we get to see him. And you never know. I remember Lemina coming in a January window when we were battling and fighting against relegation, doing so well to be part of that team that one of the main factors that kept us up. So you never know. He could follow in the same footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is it's another face to add to the squad. Everyone
Yeah,
was worried that we might only get Agbadou because they've seen how we've worked in previous windows.
yeah,
So if we get this, that's two. I know Lemina looks like they're going to be going. I think it would be quite funny, to be honest, if it'll they this Al Shabaab decide, like, keep arguing they don't want to pay anything to just
yeah, yeah,
take out the extra year on Lamina's contract because there is an option, and
yeah,
just be like, right, we're going to hold you hostage until they pay more money.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But
yeah.
then you don't want that morale going around the squad because it's just gonna
Nah, stick
ruin
him
it.
in the under 23s.
Well, yeah, could do that. Stick him in the under 21s or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, so it's another face. I'm happy with that. And
yeah, yeah.
you can't. Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it all comes through because it seems like it's
Hmm.
imminent.
Yeah.
Now we're going as this episode comes out tonight. For anyone that listens on the day, or as we record it, at least Monday night is the Chelsea game. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, we've had 2 losses on the trot after our little Vitor surge. How are
Mm.
you feeling going into this game? Again, it's another tough game in this little
Yeah,
run in that we're in. I know they've been up and down a little bit, but it's still a very strong side, Chelsea.
yeah. I think I'm weirdly more confident. I say weirdly because of the teams we've played on paper. I'm weirdly more confident to play Chelsea than I was for us going into the games against Forest and Newcastle. Purely because, as you said, you hinted at the fact that they've been a little bit sort of up and down. And, there is that inconsistency about them. I think it goes one of two ways. I think we scrape a result, whether that be a win or a draw even. It's a bit of a free hit because of the Ipswich score against Man City. So I think it either goes that way or we do just get, comfortably beaten. But I don't know. I'm weirdly confident because of how weird and inconsistent of a side they seem to have been so far this season.
Yeah, it's going to be an odd one because apparently Semedo is still training and should be good. Apparently Cunha came down with some sickness following the Newcastle game and was out of training for a day or so. So fingers crossed.
Give him a bit of ibuprofen, a bit of Lucozade, he'll be all right.
Get the Vicks vapor about. Hopefully, though, they are fit because obviously, if Cunha is ill, that's going to be a massive blow going into that Chelsea game.
Yeah.
By all accounts, Totti is still a week or two away from return, but not far away.
I might go knock on for him later.
Sorry,
I might go knock on for Totti later.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna. What do you think? Who do you think is going to be in the lineup? We're going to see any changes, especially defensively, given the last couple of games and the weaknesses at the back.
I can't see Hwang starting. I don't know. I think the only change you could make at the back would be to bring Semedo in because I just don't think I don't fancy Dawson coming in for Bueno. I just unfortunately think I've seen enough this season in terms of. I think he could do a job coming on off the bench if you needed to tighten up and you would need an experienced head, but I'd be surprised if he was able to manage any more than that over the course of 90 minutes. As you said, Cunha that's the biggest miss possible, isn't it, if that was to happen? Because as soon as you mentioned Chelsea away, like everyone out there, I think back to last season and it was the Cunha show. Well, when he got his hat trick at Stamford. Well, and a bit of Pedro.
I was going to say, you say that. Yeah. For me, he got the goals, but it was the Neto show. If you think back and watch back, proper coverage of the game, he got the goals, but most of the work came from Neto. So it was and that one goal had a wicked deflection as well. So I think, I'm not taking anything away from Cunha. He's fantastic, but it's a very different thing now that Neto's in that side. The other thing, of course, is if Neto scores, or when even Chelsea scores, is he going to do more ridiculous celebrations in front of the Wolves fans? Because that was horrible.
Yeah, if he does, then that is the one time that I will actually want Lemina back, just because we know he's partial to a little scrap, with the opposition players and his own. That would drive me insane. It's just disrespectful, isn't it? I think. But then, is it actually? Is it disrespectful? He's a man doing his job and he's playing for his current team, so. I think it would rub salt in the wound, but I
think as we discussed at the time, it's not like a celebration is not disrespectful. It was the manner in which he was practically mounting his teammates and riding them. I mean, it was less than a week or two after the transfer? It just felt, and at Molineux, just felt ridiculous.
Yeah, Chris, having said that, I've seen a lot on Chelsea Twitter pages, X pages, Elon will be on to me, about, I've seen a lot of fans getting on his back, saying he's been underperforming and this, that, and the other. And I think that's a classic thing that happens when you move to one of these top 6 teams. So, maybe it's not as rosy as it all seems when he was prancing about celebrating. And if that is the case, then good,
Yeah, we'll see. I think if Cunha's fit, obviously he'll come in place of Hwang. So I think it'll be Hwang, Cunha, and Gedge up front. I think still going to be Andre and Gomez in midfield. And then it really is on that back line. If Semedo's fit, I think he'll come in instead of Rodrigo Gomez.
Yeah.
And obviously Aït-Nouri. And then it is down to that back 3. For me, I get what you're saying about Dawson. But I wouldn't be amiss if he wants to try Dawson in the middle instead of Bueno after the last couple of games.
Yeah.
But I think, it'd be very interesting. I do think Agbadou has shown a lot of potential in just his one. Well, he had the game against Bristol City in the Cup, and then the game against Newcastle, and so I am really curious to see how he's going to do as he gets used to the Premier League.
It's just the playing on the left, as you said. It just looks way too uncomfortable.
Yeah. But it's going to be an interesting one. If Cunha is not fit, then what I would be intrigued by would be the potential of if Hwang drops to the bench, because Semedo would be fit, is to have Semedo in the right wing back and then put Rodrigo Gomez left wing.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Rodrigo Gomez and Ait Nouri combined on that left, they can actually swap. They can swap positions at any point and be interchangeable.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think, to be honest, depending on which players are and aren't available, I know it seems stupid to say, but I think the team picks itself. The only interesting one would be the centre half option, but either way, it's like you said, it's you could go either way with that decision, and it's not going to make a massive difference, you wouldn't have thought.
No, but I guess the important question though, Will, is do you have a scoreline in mind?
Yeah, I like I said, I'm weirdly confident, but I'm confident, I'm confident that we'll get something. I'm going to go for a 2-2. I'll take a point. I will take a point, just because I can't see either team keeping a clean sheet. And like I said, they're a weird team. They're always weird when you watch them. There's always goals, and I saw a stat saying that out of all the games this week or this weekend in the Premier League, the away team has scored in every single game.
Well, I feel like that's just predicted that we won't score.
I know it'll be the most classic Wolves thing for us to not continue that record. But I just, like I said, I'm weirdly confident that we'll get something.
I'm glad to hear you say it. For once, I have to say I'm not. I feel like we're in this little dip at the moment, and the uncertainty over whether Cunha's sick or fit or whatever. The uncertainty,
he should be fine.
The uncertainty at the back in terms of just the way, like we mentioned against Newcastle, we've just left people so unmarked.
I know,
I'm just very, very scared, I'll be honest. So,
well, I'm sort of predicting it with the logic that you'd hope that they've been working on that since the Newcastle game. And, I also look at the Chelsea attackers. You've got Palmer, Neto, Mudryk if he plays, Sancho. I just hit him. Just, there's not like a big presence to rough you up or anything. Like, Isak's a big target man as well as a good footballer. The same with Chris Wood at Forest. So it's a slightly different challenge in that aspect. And, I fancy Agbadou just going through someone and setting the tone.
It's been interesting hearing all the different people across the past week or two saying that Agbadou looks good, but we think he's going to get a yellow or red card. Like he's going to get a red card at some point because he just looks like that kind of player.
Yeah, but as I've said to you before, you need a bit of edge.
You do.
You need a bit of edge, and I like it.
I'm really not sure of prediction. I will take a draw, but I hate to say I have a terrible feeling that we're gonna lose. I hate feeling that, but I feel like it could be a 2-1 or a 2-0 to Chelsea. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just not feeling optimistic.
Chris, I'll be honest, you're probably right, but
And don't get me wrong, I still feel like in the long run, we will survive this season. I think once we get through this other little glut of games, that is going to be really tough. Obviously we need be nice to get some points from this little flurry, but I just feel like it's going to be a tough game tomorrow, and I'm worried. I'm worried, guys. I'm worried.
Yeah, I think that's understandable.
Yeah, but I have to remind myself, like everyone else out there, that no matter the result, as against Chelsea, that out of darkness cometh light.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.